Kate mentioned, we are here to share with you a little bit more about farm to school and go into some details about what local procurement looks like, and then also some opportunities for you to engage. So here's our agenda. As I mentioned, we'll do a farm to school introduction, kind of a high level overview of what that looks like, structured ways that you can be involved, some information on our safety regulations to sell into schools and any additional market information. And then we will have a time for Q&A at the end. If you do have questions throughout, feel free to drop them in the chat. So the Indiana Grown for Schools Network is a collaborative effort that fosters the relationships that are necessary to sustain farm to school activities in every Indiana county. And by supporting our local farmers and school communities, we really forecast the emergence of agriculture leaders who understand the food system, resulting in healthier families, communities, and economies. Our network really seeks and is on a mission to expand and strengthen programming to increase our local foods that are served in schools, creating and sustaining school gardens, and incorporating nutrition and agriculture education into an already existing curriculum. And as the Indiana Grown for Schools Network, we have a team that really supports these efforts, and I just wanted to take a minute to introduce those team members. As I mentioned, my name is Brianna Good. I'm the Farm to School Coordinator at the Indiana Department of Health. So I help lead the Indiana Grown for Schools Network. My background is in education, and I do live on a small farm in Henry County. And so I really am able to bring my passion for education, agriculture, and community to the table, and excited to work with a variety of different farm to school stakeholders across the state. I believe Sophie is here with us today. So Sophie, if you want to come off mute, you're welcome to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Sophie Lindley, and I am the Farm to School Coordinator for the Department of Education. And prior to this role, I worked in school nutrition in a school in Indiana for 3 years, and then kind of got involved in the school gardens that they had, and tried to, become interested in trying to incorporate more food from local producers into our cafeteria, and then transitioned to the Department of Education whenever this role came up as the Farm to School Coordinator. So yeah, always excited to help you guys understand the school market better, and then also just learn from you all kind of, your perspective, and really excited to be here and hopefully clear things up for you and answer any questions you guys might have.
Great, thank you, Sophie. And I don't see Anna on the call, but Anna is our Farm to School Value Chain Coordinator. Anna's role allows for producers and school food service professionals to build relationships so that we can make that learning curve for local procurement just a little bit shorter. So if you are a producer who's really interested in engaging in farm to school or learning about how you can get your product into the school cafeteria, Anna would be a great connection as she is out there working with schools and producers to really support those efforts. I'm going to provide just a quick overview of what farm to school is. So in each school or community, farm to school intervention really looks different depending on the priorities, values, and landscape of the community. But in a high level overview, farm to school includes procurement, where local foods are purchased from a farm or food hub, even from a broadline distributor. They're promoted and served in the school cafeteria, or oftentimes in a snack or taste test opportunity. School gardens are where students are engaging in hands-on learning through gardening, which provides additional opportunities for producers to engage in mentorship, management of the garden, or on-site education. We have ag and nutrition education as another pillar of farm to school, and this is where students participate in educational activities that are related to agriculture, food, health, or nutrition, which can include in-class activities, school garden visits, classroom field trips to a local producer's farm or place of business, really connecting agriculture and then nutrition. So where our food is cultivated and how it benefits our bodies. And then we have a fourth pillar of farm to school, which is our farm to early care and education. And this has the three main pillars: school gardens, local procurement, and nutrition and agriculture education to promote that lifelong wellness in children, focus on ages 0 to 5. So farm to school activities are really an intervention to strengthen the connection and understanding that communities have with healthy food and local producers. And the impacts of farm to school and the benefits of farm to school really can be amplified when all three of these pillars are used in conjunction. Although we always promote in farm to school that we would start with baby steps to get there. So it doesn't have to be an all or nothing with farm to school. Taking one pillar at a time and tackling that, and we're here to support you with those efforts. So we want to dive in a little deeper to local procurement and what this might look like. And Sophie, I may pass these over to you as you're working with our school nutrition.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so when we're thinking about local procurement, really we know that it benefits the community and schools in so many ways. So it benefits you all as farmers, and it benefits, other farmers that schools might be working with, which ideally and, in a perfect world would just really strengthen the community as a whole. It helps out businesses, local businesses, and in general, just local economies. We also know that incorporating these local foods really just helps with the quality of the school's nutrition. Obviously, schools, procure from different ways, and there's values in all different types of growing practices. But we know that when we are localizing our food more and purchasing from farmers that are maybe being intentional with the ways that they're growing food, that just benefits the program overall. We also know that when kids kind of have a better understanding of where their food comes from, and maybe they would get to meet a producer or meet a farmer, they're more likely to take that food put it on their tray. And that is just great to see. A lot of times, kids might not have a ton of exposure at home, and so it's to different foods. So it's exciting when they're able to kind of be more exploratory at schools. And so really trying to help them have a better understanding of, the people that are growing their food is a really exciting way to do that. And then lastly, we think about a lot, like so every school has a wellness policy. And so we think about how can we kind of incorporate farm to school in those wellness policies. Oftentimes there is a section on school nutrition and kind of the values that the school has around school nutrition. And so, we're kind of trying to increase our efforts on, okay, maybe we could be incorporating these practices into school wellness policies to kind of hopefully make it be a more like holistic school rounded well-rounded effort, multiple people at the school kind of being engaged in these efforts. So we'll go to the next slide and just let you guys know that when we say local, there's no one set definition. The federal level, the USDA does not set a definition of local. We, as our kind of state body of farm to school folks, don't set a definition for local. So really, we leave it up to the schools. So they can maybe say, okay, I'm going to try to purchase local, and we're going to consider that a certain amount of miles in proximity to our school. And specifically, this one is helpful for the schools on the borders, because we're really just trying to localize our food system more. So even if someone is purchasing from one of the surrounding borders, or if you guys were to sell into a school, close by, we really like to see that just as much as if someone were to purchase it in state. So schools can also, maybe they're focusing on their county, or like I said, their state, or maybe even their region. So maybe that's the Midwest region, or maybe that's a region of the state, like the Northeast region of the state or something like that. So we really just leave it up to the school in order to give them kind of it makes it a little more accessible, because if you need to widen your range just to kind of try to, again, better localize your food purchasing, we definitely want to kind of encourage that and make that be kind of a part of this movement and these efforts. So that's kind of the definition. The ways that schools are kind of going about procuring food in general, just to kind of give that overview. So typically, schools are procuring from, there's like a broadline distributor, and then typically there's some other folks involved. So other distributors, smaller distributors perhaps, or again, this is kind of where local comes in. So sometimes local foods are procured through their broadline distributor. Piazza is a great option. A lot of people kind a lot of producers can sell into Piazza. There's, some regulations around that, but that can be a great way that schools purchase local. And then they also have the ability to use food hubs. We, as you guys might know, don't have a ton of those in Indiana, but there is one in Northwest Indiana that a lot of the schools up there utilize. And I think we're probably all on this call hoping that those efforts are increased in different regions of the state so that that can be a way for local foods to be distributed, as that's such a great kind of system that's set in place. Schools can also purchase directly from the farmer or producer, so that's also an option. And definitely Anna Holloway, who you guys will have her contact information, is a great way to make kind of those direct, she's a great resource for making those direct connections and building those relationships with schools that might want to work directly with a farmer. Because I think that's kind of the logistics of it is difficult when it comes to maybe some delivery options. But I think that just the intimate connection that there can be, with the school being just directly in communication with you all as producers and farmers is just really exciting. And again, for kids to be able to see that is awesome. And then lastly, they can purchase food directly from their school garden. So that's another way that schools are getting local food into their cafeterias. So some big considerations that schools are making when it comes to, how they're purchasing food is that they're following the meal pattern for the USDA nutrition requirements. And then they're also considering the cost of the meal. So if you want to go to the next slide, Brianna, what that encompasses is that there are 5 categories that a school has to provide, categories of food that a school has to provide to every student. Those categories are milk, grains, fruit, vegetable, and then a meat alternate category. So those are kind of the different ways. That encompasses all of the food, obviously, that you all would be producing. But those are kind of just the different things that a school is thinking through. They have certain requirements on different types of vegetables. There's then subgroups. So they have to have orange vegetables. They have to have leafy greens. They have to have these different kind of subgroups. So that is a big thing that kind of it structures the meals that are served at schools. The other thing that is present on school food service directors' minds is the meal cost. So they are reimbursed a set amount from the government, and then they kind of have to build their cost around that. I believe there's a minimum that they can charge schools or students, sorry, and then they're also reimbursed a certain amount. So the average cost for lunch is $3.81, and then the average cost for breakfast is $2.72. So as you can see, that's kind of they're trying to build their meal kind of into those parameters. And we always like to say, like, this is an open discussion, and there's some schools that, they really value local purchasing and they want to make it work. And so they might have a fundraiser or something to really make these efforts be more viable to fit into their meal pattern and also their costs that they're kind of sticking with. So we wanted to kind of give some tips or suggestions on kind of how this communication could go. So if you are working with a school, these are this is some information that they would most likely be curious about. And a lot of it might be, have carryover into the other markets that you all sell into. But specifically to schools, definitely going to want to be interested in the products that you have and the time of year that those products are available. Again, this is an open discussion, right? So you could come to them and say, hey, these are the products that we typically grow. And then they could say, great, we could probably use this and this, and then perhaps they would say, is it possible for you to actually grow this particular food that we would be able to utilize? And what time of year, would that be available? The school year, as you all probably know, runs from, August to then the following May. And so oftentimes that is a smaller group of food because they're not typically in session during June and July. So that's something to kind of have knowledge of going into maybe a conversation. And then also the price and then the package size. So being able to provide schools with typically what the package size is. And again, it could be helpful if you guys have any flexibility in that. Sometimes schools are purchasing at such a large volume that there could be a way, if you guys don't want to waste the time that it takes and also the plastic that it takes to maybe package something in a small quantity, perhaps the school could buy it in a a larger box or something like that. So those could also be some fluid, maybe conversations that would be had. And then the last thing is the distribution piece, which can be a challenge. So oftentimes schools are delivered, they have their delivery come to every school in their district. And sometimes that is a challenge for farmers and producers that's not part of their system. And so this is another piece of communication of just figuring that out. When I was in the schools, I would go to the local farmers market that the farm that I was purchasing from came to, and they would just bring like a larger quantity that I was going to purchase. And so it was, we kind of met in the middle a little bit. We came to somewhere that they were already coming, and then I was able to go pick that up. So that's another kind of piece of the conversation that you might have with schools. So the next thing we'll talk about is the regulations around serving local food in schools. So the first thing that we always have to tell schools is that they need to be checking, and you guys can also check with your local health department. So if you are trying to sell into this, a certain county or maybe the surrounding counties, you could check with the food division of your local health department. And they can let you know if they have any certain ordinances or requirements at the county level for this local selling of food into the schools. They, at the end of the day, have kind of the final say. So we all follow the same food code in Indiana, but the local county has the final say in any, further specifics. So we like to encourage schools and farmers to check into that. At the state level, the requirements for meat and poultry are that schools have to purchase from producers that utilize state inspected or USDA inspected processing facilities. So as long as if you're a meat producer, you're processing at one of those, then you are able to sell that meat into schools. The egg conversation is kind of always continuing. If you're an egg producer and you are wanting to sell into schools, definitely reach out to us. There's just some education pieces. I think that the egg board is wanting to make sure that both the school has that would be purchasing eggs and also you as the producer has in order to make sure that everyone is kind of aware of the risks that might come from serving local eggs to younger kiddos. And then also, obviously there's so many benefits, but just making sure everyone is kind of aware of those. So we don't have as great guidelines for that, but please reach out if you are an egg producer and want more information on that. And then for unprocessed produce, we don't have any specific regulations or requirements at the state level. We definitely encourage schools to inquire about the safety practices that you all are carrying out and the knowledge that you all kind of have on just the way that you process things and again, carry out those safety practices. But there's no specific guidelines. So we educate schools on the produce safety rule under the Food Safety Modernization Act, and we tell them about, gap audits. If a farm has a gap audit, that's kind of a check mark of yes, they're following these protocols. So we're kind of trying to do education around that, but we're also wanting to do education that is not a requirement if you are selling into the school market. So those are kind of the federal and state guidelines. There are some resources that we want to share with you all. So the first one, the one pictured here I'll talk about is the last bullet on the list. This is our Indiana Grown for Schools procurement toolkit, and there's a producer section. Well, it might be a helpful resource. The whole thing might be helpful just to, again, kind of gain a better vision of the entire picture as a whole. There's a buyer section, so kind of speaking to schools, and then there's a producer section that kind of goes into the things you guys might need to know. So some of the stuff we talked about, some other helpful things, there's some examples in there, different things like that. So that's a great resource. And then there's also this workbook and video series called the Bringing the Farm to School Producer Workbook and Video Series. It was put together by the National Farm to School Network and the USDA. And again, it just goes into way more detail about all of these things that we're talking about. I have started kind of trying to work my way through the video series, and it's really helpful. It's definitely helpful if you have very little idea of the school market. And then also myself, who works in school nutrition, I am still learning things. So definitely, I think there are more than 5 videos that are about 45 minutes long. So definitely a lot of information there that you can learn about. So yeah, those are just some of the resources that we wanted to present. And next, I'll turn it back to Brianna, and she will talk about a grant program that's going on right now.
Great. Thank you, Sophie. It was a great overview of local procurement. If you have any questions, Sophie or Anna are procurement professionals and we'll be able to help you with any of those types of questions. So as Sophie mentioned, I wanted to share an opportunity with you as producers with the USDA Local Food for Schools program. So Indiana was awarded a little over $4 million to distribute funds to participating distributors with a focus on school-based distribution of food from local socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers to our schools. So we have two participating distributors. We're working with What Chefs Want, and we're working with Region Roots Food Hub up in Northwest Indiana. To distribute products from local producers. So the project objectives are to strengthen our local and regional food systems, support local socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers, and increase local food consumption within our K-12 Indiana schools. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about producer eligibility and what that would look like. So all of our food that's purchased through LFS must come from local socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers or other SDFR. And that is a group whose members have been subject to discrimination based on the following examples. And I know that looking into our veterans too, they also fall within this eligibility. So when we're looking at those producers who are small businesses or small producers, they are able, veterans are able to fall under that producer eligibility. Some of our allowable products, everything that is participating in all the products that are going through the LFS program have to be unprocessed or minimally processed. So fruits and vegetables, including 100% juices, grain products, meats can be whole pieces, or food items such as ground meats, meat alternatives, fluid milk, and other dairy products such as cheese and yogurt. And they can be whole cut, pureed, etc. And they can also be fresh, frozen, canned, or dried are also allowable in the program. And we have a lot of schools who are ordering frozen products so that they can use those throughout the school year in their school cafeteria. Some of the food safety requirements, so USDA and state regulatory and food safety requirements still apply. Technical assistance is available through our team and statewide partners, the Value Chain Network and Unigrown for Schools Network to support food safety requirements. So I know a lot of times our broadline distributors require GAP certification, but we've been able to work with the Division of Food Protection at the Department of Health to kind of waive that requirement at this time. And so state inspections through the Indiana Department of Health have been something that we have been able to utilize throughout this program. As we know that GAP certifications can be quite extensive, and we have a shorter program with a little bit too quick of a turnaround. So as I mentioned, it's not a very long program, but it's an opportunity for producers to engage for 12 months. So we were able to begin this program for the 2024 or 2023-2024 school year. And now we have received a 12-month no cost extension with a new end date of July 2025 or until all funds have been spent. So that puts us into another school year, from August 2024 to July of 2025, schools will be able to participate. We will continue to onboard producers who are interested or eager to learn more or participate in this program. So if you have questions about the USDA Local Food for Schools program, please feel free to reach out. I can direct you to our participating distributors so you can learn more about that onboarding process. Anna has a really great understanding, clear vision of what that looks like to participate in this program. I would encourage you to reach out to her as well, and we would be happy to answer any of the questions that you might have. We also have some other upcoming opportunities for producers to engage with Farm to School Month in October, such as the Apple Crunch. And I'm going to pass this over to Sophie as she's really leading the efforts here in Indiana with Apple Crunch.
Thanks. Yeah, so historically in Indiana, Purdue Extension has kind of been the forefront leader of this, and then the Department of Education has joined on, and the network as a whole. And this is really just a great time to celebrate local apples and promote kind of both the local procurement piece and also the education piece for Indiana schools. So schools would sign up for this and they would be given resources on again, kind of how to procure those local apples, and then also ways that teachers and other members at the school can incorporate education around apples into the school. So this happens, this celebration happens during October, which is Farm to School Month, and we really leave it up to the school as far as how they might participate and when they might participate within the month of October. We know with fall breaks and stuff, we kind of just want to leave it up to them. So this is the first celebration in October. And then the next one is we have Indiana Food Day every year, and we pick a different food to celebrate. So this coming year of 2024, we've chosen pumpkins, as Indiana is such a large pumpkin producer. And we hope that schools, again, really kind of just promote this food and the fact that we grow a lot of pumpkins in Indiana, and help kids to, again, kind of understand that. That was a fact that I learned. I had no idea we were such a large melon and pumpkin producing state. And I think a lot of kids don't know it either. So really, we're just kind of trying to go food by food, food group by food group, throughout the different years and promote these foods. So again, there'll be toolkits provided to schools that sign up on kind of how they might grow pumpkins. We sent out seeds at the end of last school year, and then how to procure local pumpkins, and then again, how to incorporate pumpkin education or pumpkin surrounding education into the classroom. So these are some fun efforts for schools to engage in Farm to School. And we also, I don't think we've said it on this call yet, but Bryn actually mentioned it at the beginning. When we're talking about this with schools, we really like to promote the idea that you can do as little or as much as you want to in this realm. And that goes for you all as well as producers. Some producers might be deterred from this, as we know that there's a lot of kids that eat in schools every day. And we're definitely not saying that a producer might need to provide all of the spinach or all of the tomatoes that a school might be using. Rather, we like to promote the idea of, again, just starting small. Maybe a school would utilize the produce from a local producer one day a month, or even have it kind of come into the larger amount of apples that they're purchasing. Maybe, maybe you're buying a bushel from a local farmer and you are also buying some from your broadline distributor. Again, we know that there's value in that. We know that even if kids are seeing, oh, some of this is coming from our state, that's awesome. Even if some of it is coming from a different state as well. So we definitely like to promote the big and the small efforts. And these food days, the Indiana Food Day and Apple Crunch, are kind of an example of that. Even if a school were to only participate in one or both of these events in the school year, that's awesome. And that is exposing the kids to this idea that we produce some great quality products in Indiana, and also kind of helps them to link that back to their nutrition and just kind of learning more about the foods in general. So those are just a few examples of how schools can get involved in October. And I believe that that's all we have. We might turn it over to questions. If anyone has any questions, we'd love to answer. Please feel free to put it in the chat, or I'm not sure if you're able to come off mute, but happy to answer anything.
Awesome. That was great. Really informative. Yeah, feel free to put any questions into the chat or reach out to us later. I'd like to throw it over. I think Brad, if you're on, and you'd like to add in a little bit about how Addie's Orchards and Veterans in Farming will be working with this, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Brad, new to Veterans in Farming. I'm also joined by my wife, Rachel, and we're really honored to have been selected as a recipient of the Patrick Leahy Farm to School grant program for this next year. And specifically, we're going to be exploring the opportunities and addressing gaps for veteran farmer participation in the Indiana Farm to School program. So our kind of big picture objectives are identifying veteran farmer participation opportunities, looking for those local food source requirements that schools and school districts may have, building relationships with the state offices, universities, and specifically the Indiana Grown for Schools network, so that we can promote long-term sustainability of veteran farmers' participation in the program. And then finally, publishing an action plan that supports that future implementation based on what we've found. So through the next year, we plan to develop a better understanding of what veteran farmers' needs are when it comes to participating in this program. We also want to kind of evaluate those school nutrition program needs and vendor requirements. A little bit of that was addressed today. Identify those challenges and opportunities for implementation. We're going to solicit community feedback and input, and then take all of that and develop an action plan that we can utilize, hopefully, future grant opportunities for. So I think we're going to start by connecting with those program entities and groups such as Indiana Grown for School to really learn more about the program. Today was super informative, and we look forward to doing a deeper dive with the team to learn about the challenges and best practices that you guys are seeing. And then once we get a good picture of that, we'll start reaching out to schools and school boards to determine what their needs are and what their interests are. And then we'll compile all of these findings and then connect with veteran farmers to determine what all of your interests are, what your capacity is to support, and what concerns you might have in participating in the Grown to School or the Farm to School program. And then we'll draft that implementation plan and publish it and get feedback before we submit it to the program as our final kind of output from the grant program. So that's what we've got in a nutshell. We're excited to get started with the program over the next year and really see how can we empower veteran farmers to participate in this program.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad. So Brianna, just a couple questions, and maybe Brad could also weigh in. So if we had a producer watching this today, say they process their beef farmer, they have ground beef, they have some extra, they use USDA processing. How do they get in touch with you today, or to find out? They just have a small number of cows, but they want to see if they can get that into their local school. What's sort of the process for them to start that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a good start would be to send us an email. We also have a buyer's guide that's on our website, or a producer directory, where they can input their information. We can add that so that they are now a producer that is showing up for food service directors who are looking for local producers. But probably the best way would be to reach out to myself or Sophie, and then we would connect them with Anna. Anna is such a valuable resource and came from our Patrick Leahy Farm to School grant as our value chain coordinator, focused solely on farm to school. So Anna would be able to meet with that producer, really get a good understanding of what their product looks like, what the best market would be for them, whether
I think she cut out.
Yep, looks like we cut out. Maybe you can finish up.
I can finish. Yeah, she was pretty much done. Definitely. Anna is kind of slowly, we all are kind of trying to learn about schools that we know that are wanting to kind of get into this local procurement, but Anna definitely does that more full time. And so if she doesn't know of a school in a certain area, we definitely can, try to reach out and see in a given area. So definitely reach out. I did drop the buyer's guide directory in there. So if you all want to
Awesome.
just sign up on that, we definitely refer schools to that all the time, just so if they want to reach out to farms directly, then they can.
Okay, awesome. And then also if Brad or his wife Rachel meet veterans who want to get more involved in the volunteering education aspect side of it, or helping out getting a community farm to school garden going, what are those sort of non-product ways, but still people who are passionate and they have that ag education background, how could they get involved?
Yeah, kind of the same thing. Please send us an email. That is a great resource for schools. You know, a lot of times, a challenge is like the time that it takes for teachers to be providing this education. We have kind of like it's internal right now, but we have a map that we're trying to reach out to all the schools in Indiana to kind of get a gauge on any sort of farm to school efforts that they have. And so again, if you reach out to us and we know of a school that is doing that work, we can definitely connect you. The other thing I will say is that we work closely with Purdue Extension. They're a part of kind of one of the bigger organizations that are a part of the network. And so they also might know of a school. So we might reach out to one of their educators and try to put you in contact with a school that might need some extra education help. So yeah, that would be awesome.
Awesome. All right, and then another question for you and Brianna. What have you found over your past few years of working that are kind of like the top 3 to 5 products that are really great, that school food service can usually work with, and that are usually sort of in high demand if our beginning farmer and veteran population wants to start a farm? What are some things, maybe Brussels sprouts are not as big a seller as apples or that kind of thing, but what are sort of your top 5 that are really commonly used and easy for delivery and transportation and sort of longevity of a crop to be able to use over a while?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think for me, the thing that I see working and also think it can kind of work with a lot of different schools are the items that are most similar to how a school might purchase it from a broadline distributor. So I think I might have mentioned it, but like spinach, leafy greens, cherry tomatoes. If you are have an orchard, like apples, pears, these items, those can pretty easily be incorporated because there's not as much of a operation learning curve. So if you're able to provide those, I think those are kind of the easiest ones, or maybe you're able to provide one of those. That's kind of my perspective, but Brianna, I'll let you also answer. Oh, I don't know if we can hear you.
While we're waiting for her to jump in on that, maybe you could answer this question. What
Yeah.
food safety standard does value added products need to be at?
Yes. Okay. So value added meaning process, like anything processed, is that kind of maybe where we haven't talked about that?
I'm
We need to
thinking
just,
like jams and jellies
Yep.
or that kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. We need to just add that to our slide because we say unprocessed produce and then we don't talk about anything processed. If it is processed in a commercial, I think there's like I need to know the name. It's just like a commercial level kitchen. It's not any different than like how you would need to sell it into like a store or something like that. Just if it's processed in I'm blanking on the term. It's the commercial like
commercial
license.
kitchen. Yeah.
Yeah, commercial kitchen license. Yeah, that's the
Okay.
only regulation around that.
Okay.
And thanks
So
for that
sort of-
question. Well,
sort
Hey,
of
Sophie,
above oh, go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to jump in. Hey, Sophie. So I think just to clarify, so it's not farmers market level. If I can sell my jellies and jams under cottage laws at a farmer's market, I cannot put that into a school. It has to be commercial level. Is that what I'm understanding?
you are. Yes, thanks for
Okay.
that clarification. So I think I said that, but not
That's
market level. So a commercial style kitchen, if it's processed in that, then it's able to be sold into schools.
Okay. I had one more question, Kate, if you just want me to.
Yeah, go ahead. Jump on in.
Hey, so we have a lot of veteran farmers that do kind of unique foods like bison or rabbit or some of the more exotic animals, goat, sheep, and meats or milks. how, is there a need out there? Is there an interest, and or what would the process be for that?
Yeah, the need and interest I think would just depend on the school. I don't know if I have like a good answer for that. It, you know, and I'm realizing now that that slide says meat and poultry. We'll have to look into that because so it'd be like, what is wild game like the um overarching body of that? I can find out
Yeah,
who
yeah. So some of our producers produce and are under like a wild meat law versus a USDA standard beef poultry type of rules. So it's just a little nuance that just off the top of my head, I know I can think of 3 people that farm rabbits that are wanting to educate people on the value of rabbit meat. And I can think of a bison farmer that would probably participate because he wants to really sell his product and educate people on the value of bison and rabbit, both as a lean meat substitute in some of the things. But I know there is also sometimes new has more of a challenge bringing it into schools. You know, the yuck factor. I've never tried that before. So I didn't know if there was an interest or a challenge there, but I do know we have veterans that like to produce those things.
Okay. Yeah, great. I apologize. We will have to get back with you on the answer as far as the regulations go. And then I think as far as schools' interests, we might just have to start talking about it and just kind of gauge, you know. We never mention those things in presentations, you know. And so, yeah, just maybe trying to work that into our verbiage that, okay, we know that these are being produced in Indiana, and that way we can see if schools would be interested. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that
we'll get
might be
back to you.
just be, yeah, that might just be unique to us too, because we have a lot of people who homestead or kind of have that homesteading small production mentality, vice a large production, which I think, you know, a lot of the discussions focus toward. But we do have some small producers that would probably be interested in that education aspect.
Great.
And then you mentioned a little bit about liability insurance and that kind of things, but are there some other guidelines in the procurement guide that probably would direct our veteran farmers into knowing what they might need insurance wise on the back end for working with schools?
Yeah, so there's no, oh, go ahead, Brianna.
You're good. Can anyone
Okay.
even hear me or?
Yes.
We can hear
Oh,
you.
great. Okay. I was just sitting here clicking all kinds of buttons. So great. I don't know that there is specific insurance information in their liability insurance, but it does connect you to the Indiana Value Chain Network. And those value chain coordinators are kind of our experts in understanding really what the producer is going to need to be able to enter different markets. So I know that we have a farm to school value chain coordinator, but that's not the end all be all. There are other value chain coordinators across the state who might not work specifically with producers who are only wanting to enter schools, but other types of institutions. So they would have a good understanding of what that would look like. So I encourage you to reach out to the Indiana Value Chain Network or a value chain coordinator that's within your region to learn a bit more information about what that looks like. And then also, if you don't have that information or you're like, I really don't know which one to reach out to, please connect with me and I can get you in contact with that individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll just say sometimes it is like a school by school basis. So some schools might, specifically contract companies might say, oh, we would really like, or we really need you to have some sort of liability insurance, but it's not required. So then some schools might say, oh yeah, no, we don't need you to worry about that. So that's another kind of factor in it. But the value chain network is awesome if you guys haven't been in contact with them.
Great. Well, is there anything else, Brianna or Brad, that you'd like to bring up? I really appreciate everyone's time today. And just thank you so much. And if anyone listening just has any questions, please feel free to email any one of us and we'll put you in the right direction if we don't know the answer. So thank you so much for joining us today. And let's be in touch. And we're excited about working with this program and getting more Indiana local veteran food into schools. Thanks so much. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.